I don't really play a lot of shmup type games, but something about Under Defeat hits different. It was developed by G-Rev, who are a pretty respected purveyor of shmups, and it originally dropped on the Sega Naomi and ultimately was ported to the Dreamcast in 2006. There was a little bit of a funny phenomenon going on in the mid-2000s where everybody seemed to be trying to drop the last ever Dreamcast game, given that Sega had dropped their support of the console back in 2002, 2003. And also, weirdly, a lot of them were shmups. You had Radigy, you had this, you had stuff like Triggerheart, Excelica, but aside from happening to fall in that interesting time period, Under Defeat really does stand out on its own as something of a unique shmup. First of all, Under Defeat has a really appealing setting and really lush graphics. In terms of the aesthetic, we have kind of a diesel punk thing going on. We're very much dealing with World War II era structures and vehicles, but then there's crazy huge dreadnoughts and tanks and mechs and things that really wouldn't have been around at that time, but all designed and rendered in that very iron diesel style. Think something like Ring of Red on the PS2, or maybe a more obvious point of reference would be the Valkyria Chronicles games. Not only is the art direction very cool, but there's something about the way the graphics are realised that make it very crisp and satisfying. There's a nice visual variety to the stages. We've got rolling green forests, huge snowy castles, big harbours full of tanks and trucks and gun emplacements. And something that I very much appreciated were the little narrative touches in each stage. For your part of the game, you're in charge of this little gunship helicopter thing, and we'll get to the mechanics of that in a minute. But obviously there's a war going on here and it's not just you fighting it. And so even though most of what you're going to be doing is flying straight and blasting the enemy, if you look down and have a look at what's going on the ground, you will see friendly units of your own tanks and trucks and things like that doing some fighting. Sometimes there'll be neutral or civilian units just roving around. It makes the stages feel more alive and more involved. In my experience, shmups can often be these very high skill ceiling type games that are just meant to be viewed in wireframe. You know, you get into this zen state and you just blast in and you're not really thinking about what's going on in the world. You're just thinking in terms of hitboxes and scores and this kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, but it's just not the way that I engage with games, which is why I don't tend to gravitate to this genre. But there are a lot of really beautiful shmups, especially on the Saturn and Dreamcast, that have some unique, striking visual choices, and those tend to be the things that I'm drawn to. But obviously, visuals are only part of the battle here. Ultimately, this is an arcade game, and therefore the play is very, very important. I had a lot of fun with this game and I've replayed it a lot of times and I'm going to replay it a lot more times. So while I was getting ready for this video, I really wanted to think about what it is that makes this one feel different from other vertical shmups that maybe I don't gel with as much. And the conclusion that I came to is that it doesn't make any huge radical shifts, but it does make a lot of small subtle tweaks, and those all put together make this game have a very robust and satisfying feel. The first time I ever played this game, the thing that struck me is how impactful everything felt. There are really no bullet sponge enemies, even the bosses can be taken out fairly quickly if you know what you're doing. So there is something going on here about the way the bullets look, the sound of the gunfire, the visible damage to the enemy ships, and the way everything just kind of explodes and crumbles in this really satisfying way. Like I say, very few things in this game are going to take more than a couple of bullets, so it's super satisfying to just strafe across the screen and strike down an entire line of enemy choppers. Speaking of strafing, that's another important mechanic here. As you've probably noticed, you can lock your aim in 45 degrees either way, and that's one of the main things that you need to consider tactically as you're playing. All the time that you're holding down the fire button, the chopper will stay facing whatever way it's currently facing. So if I'm aiming a little left, I hold fire, and I strafe right, I'm going to be shooting upwards and left, that kind of thing. Again, it seems small, it seems subtle, but it is something that gives a real strategic depth to the game, and just gives it its own feeling. Another thing to think about is the way the game handles options. Options meaning when you can call in a little mate to fight for you, a little satellite drone or something that flies around your ship and shoots with you. In the bottom left of the screen there's a meter constantly building or cooling depending on you shooting. If you don't shoot for a while, it'll build to the top, and then next time you shoot, you'll produce an option, a little friend to fight alongside you. But if you're just constantly blasting willy-nilly, that'll never build, so you'll never get an option. Managing that meter and learning how to maximise your options is one of the things that'll make the game feel a lot more accessible. But that really is it in terms of tactics to think about, at least starting off. I'm sure there's a lot of high-level play that speedrunners could tell you about, but I'm not that kind of person. I'm very much a casual fan of this genre, so I actually think this is a really great game to start with if you've never played a shmup before, or if you haven't played many, or just never found one that clicks. Now all the footage you've been seeing so far is from the Dreamcast version because that's what I've got, but I have literally just seen that City Connection have dropped this new port with sort of HD functionality, widescreen, a couple of little extra options. It looks like a really nice package and it looks like a reasonable price to me. So I would say if you don't want to faff around trying to get hold of the Dreamcast version, this looks like a pretty good way to play this game. But for now, my friends, I think that's everything from me. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please do all the usual YouTube customary stuff and let me know. I'll be back soon, and I hope you'll be back here soon to see whatever I talk about next. Take it easy, guys. Bye.